he was like, I'm gonna be in El Paso. I don't know if you saw that he's in El Paso.
He got like bombarded with all kinds of recommendations, which was cool.
But also I was like, why are you lying though? You're gonna be here for the game. He's like, from Saturday to Monday. I'm like, yeah, okay. Why would you not come to the game?
Right?
He doesn't want to get found. I don't
Admin
know.
reveal.
But, yeah. Face reveal.
Yeah.
I was like, if you don't try the machaca at
Lucy's,
then like people are like Chico's. I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't even do that.
No, that's what was foul because he said L&J's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then Chico's in between.
Like,
bruh,
you are playing against us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC, a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network, and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Icarus FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and I am joined by my co-host, Mikka Burrell. Mikka, how's it going?
It's going well, Phil. How are you doing?
Doing good. You know, just it's been one of those weeks where I've been one day ahead of the actual day. So I've been kind of psyching myself out, and the week has been dragging as a result.
Yes. I actually thought today was Thursday. We're recording on a Wednesday, and
Yeah.
I was distraught to learn that it was not.
Yeah, it's this whole week, I don't know, for some reason I've been a day ahead. So same deal. I'm just like, I have these moments throughout the day where I realize that I'm actually not as close to the weekend as I thought, and not as close to Locomotive's playoff game as I thought, which I'm still got some nerves around, but that's why we're here, and we'll get on to that. We'll get on to previewing the playoff game. We'll talk a little bit about whatever happened down in Edinburgh last weekend. But first, we'll get some admin out of the way. If you're finding Seriously Loco for the first time, I will say you're just in time for the playoffs, and happy to have you on board because I simply can't resist a train pun early on in an episode. But yeah, hopefully, if you did find us, it's probably via the internet in some form or fashion. But our podcast is available on all the major podcast platforms, and then you can find us on Twitter at Seriously Loco, and you'll find like links to the episodes and all that sort of stuff, plus a bunch of memery and other fun stuff. And we're working on some other things. I'm sure this will be broadcast on the Twitter as well. But Mikka, we got some a little merch we're working on as well.
Yeah. I mean, we did a run of these, probably our first season, I don't remember.
I think first season.
Of Seriously Loco stickers. So those are in the works. I'm hoping to have them in hand tomorrow, which means I'll hopefully be able to give them out at the game. Just keep it locked on our Twitter, and I'll let you know where to find me at the stadium, and I'll just be giving them out. Just something a little nice to have, and just spread the word a little bit. We've really grown a lot. I think this little community you have is awesome, but we'd love to grow it a little bit more. So slap it on your MacBook or whatever you want to do, and so more information coming on that. Yeah,
no, I'm excited, and we'll hand some out in person, and then as always, like for those people who are remote or away from El Paso in any way, like you can drop into the DMs and we'd be happy to hook you up with some. If you're looking to spread the gospel wherever you're at. I know we've got, eighth notch send texts and all those things. So we got, representatives worldwide. So we're happy to help you evangelize, wherever you're at. But yeah, so we're working on some stuff. I think we had like a few ideas in the works in this season, obviously, like the past two seasons being the COVID affected seasons and with the amount of change going on in the crew and all those things, I think we've held back a little bit. But I would say next season we'll get some good merch in the works now that we're going to have a full off season. We're going to have have some time to put plans in place.
Right. Some sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
For sure. So we'll be able to plan some things for you guys.
Well, Mikka, I mean, as we dive in now to the episode, we can talk briefly about the last game of the season, RGV 4-1 loss. Disappointing in a lot of ways because obviously, this is the second kind of heavy defeat that we've taken in a road match where maybe it's felt a little bit like a dead rubber for the team and a little bit like tough to get up for, given the fact that we'd already, won the division. We'd already clinched Copa Tejas. There's not a lot like on the line. Are you at all worried about the teams suffering these defeats in such close proximity to the playoffs?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, yes, you never want to see, the team that you support kind of head into such a crucial, part of their season, their postseason, really, in that kind of form, especially because these games weren't particularly close either. But, on the flip side, no, because as you said, it is a dead rubber in a lot of ways. Not for RGV and certainly not for LA Galaxy 2, some weeks ago, who just barely missed out on the playoffs despite that pretty, substantial victory over us, the biggest victory we've ever given up, actually. Yeah. RGV 2, we're trying to make it into the postseason and did so and knocked out that team up north by beating us. So, yeah. There were some implicit benefits to being, suffering in Edinburgh as we always do. Our wait for points at HEB Park goes on. I really like the pitch usually, but it wasn't looking too hot the other night. So, not to make excuses, but they were a bit tougher conditions, I think, than even already present themselves at Edinburgh. So yeah, try not to read too far into it. It was upsetting to watch during the game, obviously, but gave me an opportunity to post all of my darkest memes.
I'm looking for the bright spots in this one and looking for more so thinking about this game in terms of the potential playoff implications. I think what was encouraging was the return of Richie Ryan to the pitch. We've seen him in coach's gear essentially for the last couple of months. Right. And I think there was maybe a general feeling that maybe he was just kind of winding it down and who needs the, the runaround, I guess, but Richie fit again and started this one. Maybe not, a match to write home about necessarily, but certainly good to have him back in the playing squad headed now into the postseason, along with a couple of other key pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Richie had missed all of October really with that injury he was suffering, and he gets a first half run out. He comes off at halftime, but even so, 100% pass success.
Yeah.
for Richie, which you haven't seen a competitive match in over a month. To do that and to have double the passes in his own half where he was really controlling everything, and then a good amount of them in the opposition half as well is really good. Yeah, I mean he was just class on the ball as he usually is. Definitely, you could see a little bit of the rust that naturally is going to come when you haven't played competitively for a little bit. But I thought it was a good run out for him. I'm glad we didn't make him go the distance because, he is 36 years old and it was a dead rubber, as he said. So we really didn't need to risk him in that way. But never nice to lose by such a large margin. But another bright spot is Diego Luna just adds to his goal scoring, goal assisting numbers with another assist for Chapa Herrera, who pops in with a goal and he doesn't score really much at all. So, little green shoots here and there, but one of these matches that you kind of just have to put to the side and kind of divorce yourself from it, mentally. So
sure. Yeah, and thinking of totals, actually, it got me kind of thinking when you said Diego, like, because he does assist Chapa's goal, and Chapa actually it's a nice, well taken goal from Chapa as well, a nice run. But looking at the stats for the regular season in an offensive sense, obviously Aron Gomez and Lucho Solaniak, the top, they're tied for first in terms of goals, 10 apiece. Diego has 9, and Diego also, with that assist, that was his 5th assist of the season. So 14 goal involvements for young Diego, and then Lucho obviously tied with Dylan for most assists on the team, 7 apiece. So 17 goal involvements for Lucho. And Gomez has 5 assists as well, so 15 goal involvements for Aron. So the scorers at the top of the charts are also our best creators in many aspects. So just shows some of that well-roundedness from this team.
Yeah, really, really spoiled for choice up there. I think, in kind of reflecting on this regular season overall, I think in allowing our attackers, first of all, in getting in quality attackers into the club to complement what we already had in Lucho Solaniak and Diego Luna, and then allowing those players to really express themselves, of course, in the framework of Mark Lowry's system, but express themselves a little bit more and encourage them to take shots and run and dribble. I think it's paid dividends. Has it come at the expense of clean sheets? Maybe. You could probably argue that. But it's not like we've been shocking defensively at all either. And the record speaks for itself. What was that? 3-4 losses all season?
4 That was our 4th loss. Yeah.
4th. So, I mean, not too shabby to be fair.
We had 2 losses up until the point that we clinched the division.
Right. Then LA and RGB, right?
Were both after. So yeah, I mean, Looking back on the regular season, obviously, I think like El Paso can take a ton of heart from the regular season that we've had. 32 matches, like winning 18 of those, despite a really packed October, a lot of different factors, like going into a tough run of injuries. Maybe a few more draws in there than we would have liked, but I guess we talked, and I'm certain at the end of the postseason we'll talk with Mark again. But we talked with him at the end of last season, and then kind of towards the beginning of this one as well, with the whole like late start and all those things. But we've talked to Mark, and he talked about progress year over year. So this regular season, like, has El Paso now cemented themselves into that next tier of USL with this campaign?
I mean, objectively speaking, in terms of the results, the quality, and the caliber of the squad, I would say so. I think we're up there with the Louisvilles, the Tampas, and all them. In terms of actual recognition among the wider like USL consciousness, sure. I don't know. I mean, and I think we have a listener question on that a little bit later, but I think that's the part that is something that's still a work in progress, but at the same time, not really anything we can control, because, narratives are what they are, and the people who perpetuate them are kind of in control of that. And we don't really get that amount of attention for myriad reasons, I'm sure that we'll get onto later. But yeah, just objectively speaking, I would say so. I'd say we're definitely in that tier. And, on that note, we were upset, especially at LA Galaxy 2 with how shocking that loss was. But I was thinking about this today. Like, these are the good days, guys. And you have to enjoy them. And I'm trying to kind of like make that a thing for myself, is to really enjoy this team, because we've been so spoiled.
Yeah.
It's it's incredible what Mark Lowry and what Mountain Star Sports Group have been able to put together in such a short time. There was never really a point in our short history yet where we've been like abject. There was always, you could always see that we were building something and it was moving forward. There were growing pains, of course, but yeah, guys, like these are the good days and we need to enjoy them. As we gear up for this postseason, because it's been incredible. It's been an incredible run, incredible season, incredible squad. So just enjoy it,
Yeah. And that really, heading into the postseason, that is the message, because we're headed into knockout football, as it would be called elsewhere.
Right.
Single elimination. And I mean, Mikka, it's this game against Oakland Roots, an opponent that we haven't come up against before, in a one-off. This has the potential, like, before we dive in and actually talk about the ins and outs of this matchup, these sorts of games like have the potential to get pretty weird.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's just no precedent for this. We've never played Oakland Roots. Oakland Roots themselves are new to USL Championship.
Yeah.
Having played in NISA before, and they're a pretty new club. I think they were probably established the same year we were, if not the year before or something.
Yeah, they might have like one additional year technically of being in existence.
Yeah, so I mean, we have nothing to draw on. If you go to the head-to-head section in FOTMOB, there's nothing. So yeah, absolutely, it can get weird because we really don't know. We don't have anything to draw on, and on top of that, they are a opponent from a different division. So we can't really even point to what our peers have done that frequently either. And yeah, there's the ability for a lot of weirdness for sure. I think that's the right word, Phil.
So the playoff push beginning against Oakland, and it kind of got off to a weird start, and we talked about the potential for this move earlier, but the UTEP game moved to Saturday night. Officially, Locomotive had moved the match pretty quickly after that announcement from Saturday night, so Locomotive were not competing directly with the UTEP game, and now we'll be playing on Friday evening. I think we talked about it at the time, but this feels more or less like the right call.
Yeah, ultimately, I think so. Just so that there can be no excuse now why both stadiums should not be packed for their respective teams. And, I think it maybe threw a wrench in some people's logistical plans and so be it. But I much prefer that the club and the league most likely decided on Friday rather than a Sunday, where it would have been, just not the same kind of atmosphere, I don't think. And, I think it's starting to kind of show the dividends of that decision, because the downtown is lit up in blue and yellow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. And I saw someone reply to the club on Twitter and say, wow, that's insane. Like, San Diego's in the playoffs and there's nothing like that here. And maybe that comes with the territory of being a smaller market and whatnot, but the fact that Locomotive have their own night and it's not overlapping with anything else going on in the city, I think everyone has all the more reason to get behind it. No excuses. That place needs to be packed.
Yeah. Well, and the club posted that montage of playoff games at the SWUP a couple of days ago, and obviously there were certain like impacts last year with COVID and totally understandable, like people not being super comfortable in all cases, like with being in the stadium and all those things. That first season, that home game against Sac Republic, I remember being in the press box, and the whole feeling in the building was very different from the regular season. Like, there was just a buzz in that place. I'm certain that Friday night will be very similar. I know I think the iconic images from that one are Velasquez's like third goal that really like sealed the deal, where he runs down past the dugout and everything and past eighth notch. And so, yeah, I mean, it having its own night, the potential issues and the lack of, or the potential kind of like smothering that this game could have gotten if it landed on the same night as UTEP UTSA, like it just, this occasion deserves the chance to be its own occasion. Like a playoff game should be its own, like you said, like it deserves a primetime spot. It should not be some like, I think we joked like it shouldn't be a matinee. Like it's gotta be its own thing. And so, yeah, I'm sure it'll be a long sports weekend for many El Paso sports fans because they're likely going to be like going hard on Friday night at Locomotive and then going hard again Saturday night.
Y'all get the Pedialyte on deck. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Do it now.
Yeah, if you're not hydrating actually like yesterday, you're already behind the eight ball. Like you need to step it up. No, but so as we said, primetime occasion. Friday night, the big, like, as we talk about the storylines and the potential narratives of this game, one of the big ones that stands out, and I mean, in the Seriously Loco tweet about Oakland Roots, like clinching that final playoff spot and earning the chance to face Locomotive on the final day with a win over SKC2. I put in there, like, I added Memo and said this was fate, that he would play. So Memo Diaz, obviously, part of that inaugural squad and 2 seasons with Locomotive, 2 productive seasons with Locomotive, local lad from Gadsden, all that. He returns to the SWUP in the black and white of Oakland Roots.
Yeah, it certainly was destiny. That's what it feels like. I can't even imagine what that's going to feel like for him because I'm sure he'll have family in the stands watching him, and they might be the only Oakland Roots clad folks at the SWUP that night. Yeah, it must be an incredible feeling for him, and I can't even imagine the anticipation that's building throughout this week. But yeah, I'm really excited to see Memo return to the SWUP. I thought he was a good servant to the club. Like you said, local boy, so he'll always have a special place in that regard. And I think everyone there's always been goodwill towards him because of that. I think when he left Oakland Roots, everyone was kind of like, that's great, like take your opportunity. And they're a young, exciting squad. Very socially active and all that kind of thing. So it's a really interesting club that he's joined. So yeah, and he'll be coming back to play against his old buddy Chapa Herrera. So that'll be really interesting. We'll see if anyone puts in a tackle just to let him know you're there type thing. But yeah, it'll definitely be really interesting. And I do want to let the listeners know, like our good friend of the pod, Kevin Quintana at the _KCQ 94, I think. He's got a video interview going up of him chatting with Memo and Chapa about, this game and what it means to both of them, considering, the close ties they have with one another, and Memo, of course, with the club. So definitely go check that out. I think he, gave us a lot of good insights into kind of how he's feeling leading up to this match. So, yeah, it'll be fascinating.
Do you think with that edge, do you think that Mark actually tries to play into that a little bit and maybe like play on the fact that Memo might be like a little ginned up for this compared to the rest of Oakland? Like, not saying that he's going to do anything stupid or anything like that, but do you think he maybe goes after him a little bit, like tactically, just to try to maybe get some sort of reaction or maybe see if the occasion is getting to him a little?
Yeah, well, I mean, having done our research a little bit on Oakland Roots, we know that Memo Diaz is a fixture in this Oakland Roots side. So the possibility of him starting is extremely high.
He's one of their highest rated players, like according to FotMob, second on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. He's played kind of wide, as a wide attacker and as a fullback. So it's funny because I think we've decided pretty much that when we have players that are our players playing against their old club, we definitely make a thing about it. Yeah. So I don't see why that shouldn't be the same case with players coming and visiting us. And I think, is this not only like the second time in our history that we're playing a former player or hosting one?
Yeah, it hasn't happened frequently. I think the only example that we have previously is Calvin Resend returning for Tulsa. Like after he left mid-season, I think, in season 1, and went to Tulsa when they were still the Roughnecks. And I think he played a part on Noche de Locos in the 2-2 draw in the inaugural season for Roughnecks, if I remember correctly. But I think that's the only time that I can remember that a former player actually played against us, because we've had opportunities with Jerome Kiesewetter being at Tulsa and then at Sacramento, but Tulsa then went to the East, and Sacramento didn't bring him for the game. So
yeah, so again, just more uncharted territory kind of in that regard. So yeah, I mean, they might make Memo the press trigger. Who knows? That would be actually really funny, because Memo's very athletic. I could see him getting out of that, but yeah, we'll just have to see.
So with this being the first ever matchup between Locomotive and Oakland, obviously a lot of our listeners will not have seen much of Oakland, them playing in a different division, often their kickoff times being like after or even during Locomotive games on most weekends. So first, let's talk about like Oakland's form coming into this one, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about Oakland's squad and how they've performed over the course of the season and what they kind of look like. But recent results for Oakland, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I guess the story is in the must-win games, they won.
Yeah, I mean, we thought for all the world that it was going to be LA Galaxy 2 coming to the SWUP to, traumatize us potentially yet again. But, fair play to Oakland. They really turned it on towards the end. Again, that 1-0 win against Sporting Kansas City 2, which, professional performance there. A nail biter against San Diego Loyal, 4-3 against Landon Donovan's side that a couple days before that. And, they too had been suffering the fixture congestion up until that point, playing every 4 days. So, to come through those last 3 games, having gotten 2 wins and a draw, not bad at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that's certainly arguably in better form than us right now, in, the immediate past. But,
yeah,
again, they're playing, in my opinion, opponents that perhaps are not as tough as you would face in the Mountain Division typically.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me about their recent results is that they drew Tacoma Defiance 0-0 on October 20th, and it was looking like playoff hopes over. They have to win both their last matches. They need a little bit of help to make it in the playoffs. Like, LA has to slip up. And LA, absolutely had blown our doors off like a few days prior. So it was looking, like you said, it was looking for all the world like it was going to be LA Galaxy 2. It didn't. Roots weren't really in the conversation. And I mean, this was a team earlier in the season that we were talking about in the same breath as like Vegas. Their start to the season was torrid. It was horrible. The turnaround that this squad underwent in terms of the results that they got was very impressive, despite the fact that like their overall record come the end of the season isn't like much to write home about. Them making the playoffs is not insignificant in my mind. I do think that they were helped by the Pacific being a little bit more like chaotic, and maybe a little less ability of teams. Like, I mean, Loyal not being able to see out this game when they equalized in the 85th minute, all that stuff, which may seem rich coming from us. I guess like we had trouble with that this season, to be fair, but no, they've just shown a lot of like grit to get back into this season, and then to go on and make the playoffs. Oakland have done what they've needed to do. So I think mentality wise, like I think their mentality works well for the postseason. I think the key in this game then becomes like Mark making the mentality not matter that much and just like really asserting dominance in quality, which when we look at the player stats for Oakland and how they've performed over the season, there is a gulf there.
Yeah, definitely. I would think so. I mean, quickly though, I want to go back to kind of the I'll say shambolic kind of performances they had at the beginning of the season, because I think you're right to bring that up, and also right to bring up kind of the intangible victories or benefits you could say of them making the playoffs with this grit that you note, because not only were they kind of shocking on the pitch to begin, they were the butt of a lot of jokes off the pitch as well. I mean,
or about the pitch.
Things were flying around about how about the pitch, exactly. The stadium, the pitch, like just like, stories of like shambolic match day experiences and just them adjusting from life in Nista and coming up to the USL Championship, which, technically is a step above in the pyramid or whatever shape you consider our soccer hierarchy in this country. So they've come through quite well to make it to the playoffs, and again, the word grit really stuck with me, because this team represents Oakland, California, a city that's been through quite a lot in terms of their sports franchises. I mean, the Raiders are gone. I think the Athletics are talking about moving as well. I mean, and this is a city that is, kind of in the shadow of San Francisco. So maybe they're making the most of that and really just digging into who they are and who they represent and trying to give the fans something to be proud of. So, while they are a lesser team on paper and stats-wise, I don't think we would be doing ourselves any favors by underestimating them. Yeah.
Oakland won, if I'm remembering and reading this correctly, they won their first game, like their inaugural USL game against LA Galaxy 2 on May 23rd, like the opening weekend of the season. Their next win was August 14th. They went 2 months. They did not win a game.
Hey, when they say it's a long season, they mean it. Because if you can have a 2-month shocker and still get into the postseason, then fair play to you.
And 2 weeks later, they beat Phoenix. So it was like
3-1.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a team that, like, at some point they found something, and it wasn't perfect, like far from it, the remainder of the season, but they did find something where they started getting results that they weren't getting previously. So it's certainly not any, like, we can't like overlook or look past Oakland Roots at all. Looking at their stats, though, they do have kind of a handful of players that contribute goals when we're talking about danger men for Oakland. Jeremy Bokila is their main threat, but just 5 goals. So the goals are spread like pretty thinly across this whole squad. Mm-hmm. They don't have, I mean, this is not like whatever the opposite of Colorado Springs is, basically. Like,
they don't have a guy.
They don't have anybody who's been like the guy scoring all the goals.
Not even Quincy Amarikwa, who has scored goals at MLS level. He's kind of thought he would maybe be that guy, but no.
Yeah, he hasn't even been playing that much, it seems. Like, only 14 appearances as well. So, And actually, that was something else that kind of stuck out to me is a lot of their roster did not appear in like 30 games. They're all kind of hovering in the like 20 to 25 appearances.
It seems from what I was able to gather that their manager Jordan Farrell really does have his preferred 11.
Yeah.
Which, for Mark Lowry is he takes a different philosophy where it's next man up and that kind of thing. So yeah.
The stats like aren't going to point to any one particular guy. Basically, it's going to be like, and I guess like the 4-3 against Loyal kind of demonstrates this in that it was 4 different goal scorers, like for their 4 goals. So it's just kind of it's just
on
kind of
the topic of stats. I dug through a little bit of some of the more obscure stats, and I don't know what to make of this, but I just want the listeners to hear kind of these numbers. So Oakland Roots have conceded the second most fouls in the Western Conference with 472. They're tied for least goals scored in the Pacific Division, 36. That's level with Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
But this one was really interesting to me because you can draw a lot of conclusions from them, some of which may not be right. But so they are second in number of times possession has been won in the final third in the Western Conference. They're second only to Phoenix.
Wow.
So
they press.
Yeah, it tells me they at least have a competent press or really energetic players. And so that led me to look into their squad and the makeup of it. And their average age is 26.7. That's, El Paso is 26.8. So, they're not super far off in terms of the average age, just 0.1. So, and then it led me down that rabbit hole even further. Well, why? Where does this like pressing culture come from? The manager, Jordan Farrell, he played in the German lower leagues. So he played in like Bavaria, like state leagues and things like that. And it just like all of this just clicked for me. Like, aha, you have been taught the gegenpress.
The gegenpress is strong in this one.
Yeah, and Jordan Farrell, he not only did he play in the German lower leagues, that's kind of where he cut his teeth as a manager, managing under 17 teams and things like that, and started there in Germany. So I just thought that was fascinating, and he's got a lot to prove, I think, in USL Championship, but he did take this Roots side to a NISA Fall Championship game and beat Chattanooga 3-2. They ultimately fell to Detroit City FC, who we know are like the gods of that division.
Powerhouse,
absolute powerhouse. So, yeah, like this, I've been learning about Roots the past couple of days, and like that just led me down to like, aha, it was like a eureka moment. Like, how are they putting up these numbers? Comparable, up there with Phoenix. So something to keep an eye on, because we have crumbled at a really, competent press in the past, I think, of San Antonio at home. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was fascinating.
I think they'll certainly try to target us with the press. I'm sure they've seen that game back. I feel good about a team that will press, because I think we do better with that than a team who's going to sit deep. But there are, like, if we don't come out ready to play through that press, like from kickoff, then it could get ugly. Like that San Antonio game did quite quickly. Cause we were slow out of the blocks. And so, wow. Yeah. Interesting wrinkle that that the manager has that experience. It's not something you often see in USL. I think like most people are cutting their teeth in college and like, or like MLS academies and that sort of stuff. But yeah, interesting.
He played for SG Quellfurt and Ansbach. So I think both those clubs are in Bavaria.
I've actually heard of Ansbach, though. They've probably been in the Dritten Liga like recently, like the third league. They may have like won their way up one year.
Yeah, I think they're in the Bayern Liga Nord right now, but yeah. And then that's where he became, after his playing days, U17 assistant coach. So I was like, where is this press coming from? But there you go.
Well, for headed into this match, one of the things that's been top of everybody's mind is injuries. And for those looking for an injury update for Locomotive, one of the questions was from @EdTechWizard. He asked, "How's Yuma doing, and will we be seeing him this coming game?" Do you have an injury update for us?
Yeah, so it's been put to us that everyone is healthy, bar Brian Rebellon, who will be out likely for the rest of the season with that head injury that he suffered in the last home match where he had to be taken off. Walked off on his own accord, thankfully, but looks like Brian will be done. But it's our understanding that everyone is healthy and eligible for selection. Will we see him this coming game? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Mark throws him right back into that center back place. We've had to kind of shuffle the deck a bit at the back. But yeah, he's eligible for selection at the very least, and so is Fox and Mikka and everyone. So getting healthy just at the right time. Richie, of course, we know is healthy again, having played those 45 minutes in Edinburgh. So it's as good as it can be, I think. Would love to have Brian as an option, but with a head injury, it's best to take that slow and see where that goes. So
yeah, it is. I think it's very harsh on Brian because he's had such kind of a stop-start season due to the injuries. Like he was making the case where he was, one of the first names on the team sheet in midfield when we started last season, kind of like with the skepticism around his whole switch from right back and how was
that game in Colorado where we were like, this is not going to work.
Yeah, abort. Yeah, and
lots of little faith.
Exactly. Yeah, he. So I feel really. I just feel for Brian because he has progressed so much in that role, I think, and he's become just such a key part of that midfield. I think the upside is that we do have, the right people to be able to plug in and take over those roles, but that is it's tough for Brian and a competitor like him to have had to sit out so much of what's been an awesome season for the club, and I just feel for him because I'm sure he's just he's a competitor and he wants to be in the thick of things. So, which is probably why he's unfortunately suffered some of these injuries, is because he is at the center of so much action
for sure
during the match. Yeah. But yeah, I think the health of the squad is just looking extremely good at the moment. Everybody kind of coming back to fitness. So with that in mind, Mikka, at Eric Bauer at eBau27 on Twitter asked, what lineup and formation would you like to see in the playoff match? And with those selection options in mind, how would you line up for this one against Oakland Roots?
Yeah, so I'm probably more risk averse than Mark Lowry. I think he's happy to put in guys that have just recently come back to health, but or full fitness. But I would go with our 4-4-2 diamond. Mm-hmm. Of course, Logan Ketterer in net, Borelli, Fox, Mishak, and Maka King, I think would be my back line. I know Fox, he might make way for Yuma, but we'll just have to see. I think overall Andrew's been very good.
Yeah.
Struggled with injuries as well, but healthy as far as we know now. Richie in the 6, I think that the 45 minutes he got was enough to convince me. Nick Ross, and man, that second 8 spot might be the controversial one. I might go Chapa.
Okay.
I might go Chapa, and then Diego, tip of the spear, and Lucho and Aaron Gomez to be the strike partnership. I think that would be my starting 11, which leaves a lot of quality on the bench. Like now that everyone's healthy, so.
Which, I mean, for a playoff game, not the end of the world in terms of like if you need it, you've got it in reserve. But I would make one change.
Okay.
One key change, and that is I would start Dylan in midfield instead of Chapa. And here's why.
Okay, that was the one I was going back and forth on. Yeah. We know Dylan can do that job. So.
The only reason is because Oakland is going to be so aggressive in the press. I think Dylan is one of our best like press resistant players where he is so hard to get the ball off of. He does a really good job of like controlling the ball in midfield, using his body well, plays simple passes like when he is in trouble, like often gets us out, like relieves that pressure. So that would be my only change. Not that Chapa is also extremely good at doing a lot of those things.
My thought on that now is, do Chapa and Dylan both need to be on the pitch together? Because we know Chapa can draw fouls with the best of them. So if he's drawing fouls on the edge of the area, I mean, that's...
But then it moves Nick into the 6, and because Nick Ross is undropped. Nick Ross absolutely must play in my mind.
Must play for sure.
Nick Ross must play. Right. But it's tough. I am glad to have options. Because I think in the past we would have just said this is our midfield because these are the midfielders we have, and now we have like legitimate options.
Yeah,
I was just really encouraged by Dylan's performances in the midfield, like in the midfield 3 towards the end of the season, especially at home. He was just like very good in those couple of games where he played in the 8, and I really liked his link up too with Diego, like from creating from deeper with Diego in front of him.
For sure.
But yeah. And then the strike partnership. Absolutely. I think every single playoff game should start Gomez and Lucho up top, like barring injury. Those two should start every single game.
Absolutely.
And it's no offense to anyone. It's just literally, I mean, they have the most goals for the team. And those are the guys that like, we look at our best, in my opinion, when those two are on the field.
For sure. Yeah. Interesting.
But no, I think defensively the Fox selection is the only one that may draw some like level of scrutiny. But I think the reality is that throwing a center back in like after a longer layoff, and even in Yuma's case, it was technically he played a match, like he went off injured, he played one match, and then he was gone again. Mm-hmm. And so though that sort of situation, like I'm very wary of tossing a guy back in for a playoff game, like who hasn't played in a while.
Right.
And I think we look for the opportunity. Hopefully we're like out of sight and we can toss him on and he can get some touches and just like kind of get back into it.
Well, and my thought too with the Fox shout is presence, and size. Because if we start a midfield 4 of Diego Luna, Richie Ryan, Nick Ross, and Dylan Mars, I mean those are 4 very technical Smurfs.
Yeah,
we need some, and I mean that in the most loving way.
Of course.
We need some height and something to kind of balance that out at the back.
Yeah.
And it sounds simple because it is. So,
and it is worth mentioning that Roots have some bodies. Like Wall Fall is an attacker, but he's 6'3".
Right. So I mean, you can't leave Mishak and Borelli and Maka will be in the box. So we need someone back there to kind of deal with that.
Challenging. Yeah, he'll be in Roots box. Like at the other end. Yeah.
So that was kind of my thought process on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I like the Foxy selection, and he has played pretty well, to be fair. Tactics wise, so we talked about the 4-4-2, but Eric went on to ask, are there any players that we should be concerned about playing against, and what areas of Roots game do you think Mark and the staff will be focused on scouting? Do you think it's the press? Like, do you think that's really what Mark is going to focus on, or do you think there's maybe some other aspect to what they do that Mark may go after?
Yeah, I think it's the press, and I think it is space and managing, especially the wide areas, because Roots, from what I can tell, do like to attack wide, much like we do. Their fullbacks have license to get up and down. Akeem Ward, the left back, has very good numbers. He's in very good form right now. Scored a goal against San Diego. And overall has been very solid for all of October, really, and getting Oakland into the playoffs. Memo Diaz, he needs no reason to be fired up for this one, and if he starts on that other side, then we have that threat that we need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. And that could really end up like canceling each other out or leading to kind of a back and forth, because we too like to throw Ed Borelli and Maka King forward.
Yeah.
If Boehner starts out wide, then it might be a bit more of like a one-sided wide attack, kind of Mikel Arteta's Arsenal style, if you will. Mm-hmm.
Where Borelli's bombing on and Boehner's playing a more
right, kind of becoming like a third center back almost. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that'll be of importance is managing the space out there and making sure people are dropping when they need to, or supporting each other, communicating, because there are similarities in that way.
Yeah.
We take a lot more shots than Oakland do, so if we can bear down on them first and start testing their keeper, then by all means, because they allow quite a bit of shots too. So we do have the advantage in that area. But I think tactically that's what we'll be looking at. And for them, they play a lot of 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-2-1, kind of like the Christmas tree. So again, they compress their midfield to make the space for the fullbacks too. So I think tactically it'll be intriguing, to say the least.
I think too, in terms of how we look at them, they're going to attack in wide areas, and they're going to try to exploit the fact that our fullbacks get forward. But I think, so will we.
Right.
And I do think what I like about the attacking selections that we made is Diego and Aaron in particular have shown the capability to, despite their starting position being central, Aaron in particular has taken on the mantle of drifting out wide into space and creating space more centrally for other people. Diego does the same. So I think the interchange of that attacking line, and I'm thinking big switches from the likes of Mishak up to Aaron, who's shown such good hold up play, such good ability to battle defenders off of the ball, turn, use his body to allow the ball to get down the byline or down towards the byline a little bit and run onto it. All of those things are going to play in. And I think basically the moment that I think Mark and the staff will be most thinking about is that, and Roots make an entry pass into the attacking third, which we intercept. And that moment of transition from we should be playing a long ball to Gomez, because we know Memo is forward or we know Akeem Ward is forward down the wings. We should be spraying the ball into that space wide. And then everybody in the midfield should be just motoring to get to the edge of the box, basically.
For sure.
And so I think that moment will be something that they'll have tried to replicate, only because we know that their fullbacks are going to be attacking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we know Mishak can pick them too. Yeah. So
And we did it effectively against Colorado Springs. Like most recently, that's who I can think of they were effectively attacking us from wide, and we turned that into like a distinct disadvantage, like partway through the game to, turn the 2-1 into a 4-2 victory or whatever. But,
right.
But anyways, yeah. So I think those are the things that they'll be thinking about. And Kevin Quintana also asks, being at the Fortress as the SWUP has come to be known now that Locomotive did complete the undefeated season at home, with almost a full healthy squad, will Mark be like more aggressive? Do you think he'll be more cagey, tactical? Like, will he approach this a little bit more cautiously? What do you think about Mark's approach out the gates in this one? Do you think we'll see kind of high flying Locomotive, or are we going to see maybe a little bit more cagey affair?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of hard to say, just because I think our opening sequences changed over the course of the season, where I felt like we would come out the blocks flying at first, but once late September, October came around, and especially at home, some of the starts were kind of dull.
Yeah.
And I think that was because of the ridiculous amount of football that these guys were playing.
Yeah.
So, they'll have had a little bit more rest now, so you could argue that they will try to press from the get, but I think there will be at least 15 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes of trying to establish territory and work out how Oakland Roots are going to play first, and then start to key on whoever the press trigger is, and go from there. But yeah, just recently at home, I feel like we've wanted to learn about the opponent a little bit first. So I'm kind of expecting a little bit of the same, because no one will want to concede first.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do think there will be. It definitely won't be like all out attack or anything like that. But I do think there will be a level of energy like in both squads, with it being that first playoff game and everything. So I think it's one of those things where I always think about it in, whatever cup ties, or Champions League is like the closest analogy that we, see, or like FA Cup or something like that, where
right.
Those first few minutes of the game, like, can they really just go one of two ways. Like, it's not really like one team comes out super measured and just like executes their game plan and it works like to perfection or whatever. There's really just either it's a total mess and like both teams concede like fairly early, and like it just kind of like gets, or one team is like conceding and it's just like out of hand quickly. Or you get those minutes where it's like you've played 20 minutes and no one's really done anything. Like, they're just kind of like jabbing, and they're not really like, no one's really committing. And I think last season's playoff games lend themselves to make it seem like Mark takes this like cagey approach or whatever, because they were both, the draws at home, went through on penalties, all that stuff, like close run things. But I think that takes out, I think that isn't taking into account like the full picture of those matches, which was like for long stretches of those games, Locomotive were like absolutely dominant and just like couldn't score. So right, that's
we didn't have Luchos and Diegos.
Yeah. Like
right.
we were, gosh, like the Tulsa game, I think Aron hit the post like 3 times in the second half. So it was like one of those things where it could have been, it could have easily been like 5 or 6-2 or something. And
that was the story of his postseason, unfortunately.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And hopefully with him flying right now, and in just such great form, especially at home, in terms of goal scoring, hopefully he doesn't have the same issues. But Mikka, we get down to the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. We always predict scores. We predict the outcomes. So what are we going to see on Friday night at Southwest University Park when Oakland comes to town?
Oh boy. I just have to trust that the boys are going to get it done at home. We've been so dominant at the SWUP, for one reason or another. I think the fans have been great all season long.
Yeah.
Turnout has been wonderful. Eighth Notch doing their thing that they always do. And the players are all, fit except for one. So I have us winning. I have us going through to the semifinal. I'll say 3-1 Locomotive. I think Oakland Roots will get one at least. But I think our guys are ready for this. 3-1 Locomotive. I'll say Diego Luna scoring a goal.
Yeah. Diego just seems like the guy for the big occasion. Like it's
for sure.
He's that whatever. I mean, I think we talked about it last time, just like how he enjoys the crowds. And so I think Diego is a good prediction. I was kind of thinking 3-1 as well. I don't necessarily, for the sake of like mixing it up, I'll go slightly bolder, and I'll say we could keep a clean sheet, but I'll maybe go a little more conservative on the scoring side. I'll say 2-0.
Okay.
One of those where it's 1-0 for a long period of time. Logan probably makes a couple of saves, like that sort of game where it's like we're on top for most of it, but we go through a patch where Oakland kind of has the better of play, and then we hit them on the break like late in the game and just put the icing on the cake. And I'll say Lucho just because he's been that guy, especially at home. But
for sure,
yeah, I think no shocks if either of them score. But yeah, the big game players like coming out to play in this one, and I do think I think the mentality shifts a little bit in terms of, I think everybody wanted to complete a undefeated season at home, but I think mentally, and I'm sure like this will be a point of discussion, or maybe it won't even be discussed just because they're not focused on it. Like the streak in my mind, like in terms of home, like that's not even a talking point. It's because the playoffs are a different animal. It's just we have like home field and we know we're good here. I'm not talking like if I'm Mark, I'm not bringing up like there's no streak, there's no we've got to like defend we're invincible at home, all this stuff like because I think the message is just that like we don't lose here. It's not it could be 25 or 26 or whatever the number is now, cuz in my mind it's a new season, like
for sure.
And you've just got to win the next game. So, oh man, the nerves are already building as we're still a couple of days away.
Until this conversation.
And normally this is therapeutic, but previewing a playoff match is no fun. Especially
gotta do it though.
We got to, so we'll be looking forward to Friday. We have a couple of listener questions, so we'll take a quick break, and then Mikka, we can come back and close this thing out.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, Mikka, we got a couple of listener questions to close things out, and the first is from @twisted_Beto on Twitter. And this sticks with the playoff theme. And USL, for background before I ask the actual question, USL actually produced and put on a playoff preview show on ESPN Plus, which was one of the first time. I think it was the first time they've ever done something like this. They don't do many like studio shows, so USL kind of stepping things up a little bit in terms of the content they're putting out, but. @TwistedBeto said, I watched the USL playoff special on ESPN Plus, and none of the commentators chose El Paso to be the projected winner. I also saw this repeated recently with other stats people. Some of you may be familiar with different accounts on Twitter or whatever. But he said, why do you think El Paso isn't selected? Are they really not that good, or are they underestimated or underrated? So what do you make of it, Mikka? What's your thought on why El Paso again is not like, not that they would necessarily be the favorite given the fact that other teams have more points, all that stuff, but why is it that El Paso's not selected given the fact that we have a pedigree of playoff success and had a much better regular season this season than any of the previous two?
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I have yet to watch that playoff special, and I fully intend to, because that sounds actually very interesting. But so I can't speak to what the methodology was for not selecting us, if they really did just base that on stats and odds and things like that. But again, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the top of the show, and I just feel like El Paso Locomotive FC has not permeated the USL, like, gestalt consciousness, if you will. Tampa Bay, a storied team, to be fair, like, has been around since the 70s in different iterations. Louisville doing incredible things, new stadium, like, seem very committed to playing, at this level, and don't look like they want to just pivot to MLS. They seem content with building what they have and improving the infrastructure without, immediately thinking that that'll, bring them up to MLS.
Bunch of titles Phoenix, as well, yeah.
Bunch of titles as well. I mean, Cameron Lancaster's an incredible player, and they've got a lot of incredible players there, to be fair. A history of engaging their fans. When they went through that disastrous rebrand, and everyone was like, ain't no fucking way. Like, Phoenix, moneyed club, like celebrity investors, Drogba made a pit stop in Phoenix. So, these clubs all have things that mark them out, that make them special. They have won things. They have a whole bunch of history that we just don't have until more time passes. But I do think we are getting there in terms of, or are arguably already are there in terms of our actual play and the results. So I think that's why. I just think it takes time for narratives to catch up. Now that, it begs the question why teams like New Mexico United are so popular. Yeah. Whatever that means. I mean, El Paso also is a very small market, in a state, to be fair, that has huge markets in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, those areas. Even not even just in soccer, but in life and culture and sport and politics, El Paso is, often forgotten about. And so I think you kind of see a little bit of that too bleed over into our recognition or lack thereof, and our achievements in such a short time. So yeah, I don't know what the methodology is numbers wise, but I think culturally and emotionally it kind of plays into that whole thing. So
yeah, I think as far as the playoff special, I can't remember the exact cast of that particular show, but I know one color commentator that we have mixed emotions about.
Okay.
Who's prominent in USL was on that show. So, I mean, I could list the reasons why he didn't select El Paso to win, because I'm pretty sure, given the opportunity, that man would pull on a Phoenix kit tomorrow. But I think the reality is that USL, and this is something that, and this is going to sound like I'm throwing shade at people, and it's not. I swear to God. There is,
and even if it was, this is our show. So.
Yeah, there is you talk about the USL Gestalt consciousness, right? You talk about the hive mind, but it's a joke, but it's kind of real. And the only reason I say that is because each of us that watches USL, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, Like, it's such a large entity and such a big league that inevitably everybody ends up watching from a really wildly different perspective than everybody else. And so in season 1, it was because East and West were, both these 20 team leagues. And so nobody in the East was watching what was going on in the West, or very little of it, which led to, really people were only seeing like, oh, Jerome Kiesewetter scoring a bunch of goals for El Paso, but they're really only reading the headlines. Like, and we kind of have to understand that for the people there are people that are paid to watch the game. There are other people who analyze the game for their podcasts, for their whatever content they're creating. The reality of the situation is there is probably no one who I'm willing to say that actually. I would say that there is no one on the planet who is watching every second of every USL game. I don't know that it's possible. Like, I genuinely don't know if that's even a feasible thing that can happen. So people end up making decisions and like making predictions off of their biases. We watch El Paso week in and week out. We know like the team's strengths and weaknesses. We don't necessarily see like what's going on in another team's camp. We don't see progression of those players necessarily because I'm not catching every single game. So we're not necessarily seeing like, oh, wow, this player's actually come on in leaps and bounds. Where for Locomotive, we see like week to week, we're seeing like, oh, wow, last game he wasn't really at his best. This week he's much improved, or, hey, what's going on with X this week? This sort of thing. No one really has that context for the whole league. And the sheer size of it like makes it pretty much impossible. So what ends up happening is there are a lot of reputational like decisions or like almost stereotypes that develop about teams that some are earned and some aren't really. And I think the reality is that Locomotive is seen as that team that sits on the bubble right outside of the tournament or right outside of the trophy because they've been to 2 Western Conference finals and haven't won. Like, so ultimately when somebody comes down to it and they're like in a coin toss, like Western Conference final, Phoenix versus El Paso. And I'm somebody who watches USL, but I mostly watch the East, and I don't have like a great picture of how the season has gone. Maybe I am not thinking about the fact that like Phoenix kind of like had a not, maybe similar to El Paso, like not the most like thrilling or great end to the season. And you put me on the spot and I just say, well, in my mind, Phoenix has won a Western Conference final before. They won last year against El Paso. So, I mean, gun to my head, I'm picking Phoenix. I think there's just a reality that like Locomotive haven't built they have built a reputation for being a good squad by virtue of their finishes the last couple of years, by virtue of making Western Conference finals. But I don't think people take them seriously from a trophy perspective because they just haven't seen it yet. So I don't think until they see us in a final or they see us like beat Phoenix, like that sort of thing, we just aren't going to climb that next rung of the ladder where someone who doesn't watch us assumes that we will win. Like, that's my long-winded answer to like why has Locomotive not like penetrated this kind of situation. And it's just like, it's the same reason why, gosh, I'm trying to think. There was, Loyal are a pretty good example, like last year's Loyal, I guess, or like some of these situations where a team like maybe went out and got a bunch of like really good USL players that had evidence like in the league before. And Tulsa's a perfect example. Last season's Tulsa was picked to like blow people out of the water because they're like all of these guys from Nashville who were really good at Nashville now play on Tulsa. and it's gonna just be like, we know that we saw them in this league before. They're all very good. They're all gonna it's gonna be great. And Tulsa has been a middle of the road team for 2 seasons now. So the reputational thing, everybody predicted that team would be unbelievable. And the fact of the matter is that they've been okay. But those predictions were built off of reputation, not off of actual analysis or, it was, I've seen this player play well before. They will be good at Tulsa. That is the, and that is how a lot of these predictions end up getting made is, I've seen this team be good. They will be good.
For sure. And, sometimes there feels like this kind of, because the voices in USL are all based kind of I would think mostly on the East. Mm-hmm. So there's this low key coastal elite view of things. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade either. It's more joke than anything, but there's something to that because before Real Monarchs, 4 straight championships went to Eastern teams.
Yeah.
And before that, Sacramento Republic, and then the rest were East as well.
Yeah.
So,
it's just because
Phoenix comes from somewhere.
It's just because Phoenix was choking so hard the last 5 seasons. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So you know,
yes,
it comes from somewhere. So
yeah. Anyways, that's our long-winded answer of why people. I do think El Paso deserves to be up in that conversation, but I also watch El Paso every week, so that's
Yeah, we are biased.
We're biased, so. The next question came from Jake Konecki at Jake Konecki on Twitter. With the MLS 2 sides leaving, which side note outside of Jake's question, but the MLS 2 sides, this is their last year in USL Championship and League One, and they're actually going to form their own Division 3.
And none of them made the playoffs, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, all independent teams in the postseason, which is just, you love to see it, and a fitting send off to the MLS 2 sides, Bon Voyage, and so with the MLS 2 sides leaving, who are some clubs you'd like to see join USL Championship from League 1, League 2, or other leagues in the US? Do you have any thoughts on lower league teams that you think could make the jump up to the championship, given the opportunity?
I think I'm really intrigued by Union Omaha. Mm-hmm. They are a good side. They score, quite a bit of goals. They have a nice stadium, really nice branding. Let's just be fair. That owl badge is incredible. And I think they're top of USL League One. So, if we had, promotion and relegation like we should, they'd be coming up and they'd be deserving of it. I really have interest in seeing them come up. If you want to go full Mingo and have Ford Madison come up too, that's fine. I'm still a little raw about the U.S. Open Cup game. But Union Omaha, I think, screams out to me.
Yeah. Madison were also dire in League One this year, so.
They were. I feel like I didn't hear about them much. Maybe that's
they finished
why.
9th.
Yikes. Yeah.
North Texas, Toronto 2, and New England 2 all finished above Madison.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, it was not a good season. I think the Union shout is really good. I do think that they're just a quality team that and again, so Union Omaha kind of reminiscent of Locomotive in many ways, I would say, because less heralded in terms of their expansion was celebrated, but it wasn't any big national fanfare or anything like that. Branding got some attention, but aside from that, it wasn't anything crazy. Their play wasn't talked about that much, and they actually would have gone to the League One final last year if it had been played. against Greenville, and them and Greenville are both, top of League One again this year, and Union actually overtook Greenville this time to take that number one overall spot in the regular season. So I think Union, to me, are like a less heralded playing squad than like other teams get much more attention in terms of social media. But I mean, Union have like done their business now, and 2 years in existence, and, two upper parts of the table finishes, and, could be looking at another finals trip, as they like finishing in the top two means they're straight into the semifinals of the playoffs. So, with it being a smaller league. So yeah, I think Union and Greenville are the two that I would say like they've had some sustained success, in 2 seasons. So they've shown that they are serious about their footballing activities.
And you'd like to know this, Phil. They have a Brazilian lad named Nicolas Firmino.
It's not. Thank God his first name's Nicholas, because if it was Roberto, then he would just have to change his name. Unlike Yaya Toure.
And I'll always give props to Union Omaha, because they gave Sebastian Contreras a landing spot and even gave him the captain's armband after he left El Paso Locomotive. So, yeah, big ups to that club.
Yeah, League Two. I'm not as sure. I don't know that there's any teams that necessarily like jump out as being able to make that jump. I know League Two did recently add like Kings of the Internet. Minneapolis City SC joined USL League Two. So maybe in the future, when there is promotion relegation, Minneapolis City has been a pretty serious footballing squad as well in the amateur ranks of the game. So we could potentially see them. But yeah, my shout as far as like outside of the structure, we actually mentioned them earlier in the episode. But in terms of additions to the USL Championship, and this would absolutely piss their fan base off, I know, to hear. But I would love to see Detroit City in USL Championship. I think that would be such a good addition. Like in terms of the culture, they'd be an Eastern Conference team, and we probably, we wouldn't play them. But in terms of the quality that they built on the field, combined with the fan base, I think they're ready made like for USL. And I think it would add a much needed like edge to some of because I think a lot of. And I think El Paso's been lucky to avoid this a little bit as well. But I think a lot of supporter activities get pretty sanitized in USL. And there isn't like this true independent spirit of supporters groups and that sort of thing. It feels very like controlled. And I like the idea of a wild card like Northern Guard entering the fray.
Well, if you look at what they've been talking about on Twitter this week, they like that idea too. They're very online. They
are extremely online, and I know that some people like get rubbed the wrong way by them. I think like having some context in terms of like interacting with them over a longer period of time, you come to learn that a lot of it is like banter. It's not like they're not being 100% genuine when they like some of this is tongue in cheek. And it's like a persona that they've cultivated for their group where they just don't take shit online, like from people, and anybody can get it. But like, that's what you want. Like, I don't know. That's what, like, I feel like Eighth Notch is much that way in terms of like anybody can get the smoke.
Which is why they are respected, I think.
Yeah. And so I would like to see that addition. Plus, I think like from a footballing perspective, they are like lighting Nisa on fire right now. Like they have won the last 3 like season titles in Nisa, I think, because they play a split season.
Right.
So yeah, I just think, I don't know. I think that would be a solid addition. And I think the reality of the situation in Nisa is I'm not positive like how sustainable it's going to be long term. But I think Detroit City's shown that like whatever level they exist at, they take care of themselves. So I think the only thing that may scare Detroit away from USL is there is like much more centralized control in USL compared to NISA, because it's very, very loosey-goosey, where I think they would have to probably give up like some IP rights and that sort of stuff like when they join the league. So
right, there'd be a lot of like transactional things to take care of, that they might not be used to in the wild west of NISA. Yeah.
And it's a well-run club. It's just like one of those things where I think like they enjoy the fact that they get to make a lot of decisions about like match day experience and that sort of stuff. And if they started getting brought into a culture that is built more around like risk mitigation, then like it might be a little bit different. But I think they deserve the shot at a higher level just because they have been performing like so well in NISA. And I think, you know, deep down a part of me is just still feels a bit cheated that the US Open Cup game that wasn't never actually took place.
I was going to go up there, like, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
hope that'll come to pass at some point again.
Yeah. We should just like schedule a friendly against them for like to decide like the game that wasn't, you know, like and then the trophy just has inscribed on it COVID-19.
There. You said it.
Ain't no way. Ain't no fucking way.
Yeah. So, well, that's as good a place as any. As I think we've hit burnout here.
Yeah, fair enough.
The playoffs are here. It's almost hard to believe, despite the fact the season has been extremely long. We're on. I think we hit like 26 episodes for this season or something like that.
Prolific.
Yeah, not bad considering the pace. So, and hopefully this isn't it. Because it definitely won't be it, but hopefully our next episode is a playoff preview again, and a review of a nice win on Friday night. We'll be online for that. Mikka, are you going to be sideline for this one, or?
Yes, I'll be in the trenches, trying to bring you guys that good content. So
quite literally. In the trenches where they like keep the press.
The press box is open, but I've just become so used to going down there. So I have a decision to make. But I'll be there, and I am looking forward to it. Yeah,
it should be a great occasion. Friday night. Really looking forward to a good night for Locomotive, and hopefully a good first meeting with Oakland Roots, and a bittersweet return for Memo Diaz. We'll be looking to sour his occasion, unfortunately. But Locomotive looking to start another strong playoff campaign. Unfinished business, I think, is what the tagline has been from Mark and the staff. So we'll see if they can start going about their business on Friday. But until then, and until next time, stay loco.